Welcome to IU Sports Sunday. Nick Rotacap here with you on this Easter Sunday. Happy Easter if you're joining us on this special edition of IU Sports Sunday. We have a lot to talk about. Just removed from the Indiana football spring game, something which in itself is a novelty because some programs just aren't doing it anymore, but Indiana not one of them. The Hoosiers hosting their spring game on Thursday night, and Indiana flashing its potential, showing what it could be, maybe, in about 4 months when the season gets underway, year 2 under Curt Cignetti. I'm excited, and you should be too. Nick Rotacap with you here on WGCL. We've got some returners, some big returners for Indiana. Guys who are coming back to hopefully prove for Indiana that this wasn't just a one-year flash-in-the-pan type thing. Among those, of course, Elijah Surratt, Aiden Fisher, Mikhail Kamara, D'Angelo Pons, all guys that we know. But there are some new players who enter the fold as well. And I would argue the new guys are just as important, if not more so, in helping this team, hopefully, for the sake of Indiana fans, run it back. What happened last season, very special. Of course, 11 wins. It's been well documented at this point. But everything right now sort of revolves around chemistry, I think, for Indiana football. Obviously, a lot of new guys on the roster who have maybe only been here in Bloomington for, we'll say, 3 or 4 months. And Omar Cooper, one of the guys who's been with this program for a long time, saying after the game that, once everybody sort of starts knowing what the guys around them like on a play-to-play basis, that it'll make them even better. And obviously, it's basically a glorified practice, right? That's what the spring game is. So you never want to put too much stock in what you see. But obviously, I think a lot of potential on this Indiana football team this year. I'm really excited to see how they develop throughout the summer and then ultimately enter the season. I keep looking at the schedule for Indiana football this coming fall. And, it's obviously Curt Cignetti, no self-imposed limitations. That's what he preaches, right? But this is a much tougher schedule than last year. And I don't think that that's a hot take anymore. I think that's pretty well established. But I do think it bears worth repeating that I would not expect, just because of the strength of schedule for Indiana, comparing 2024 to 25, I would not expect a repeat of last year. That said, I think if you pick Indiana to go 8-4 and people are disappointed that Indiana's only winning 8 games, got to put some things in perspective. I think that's still a very good season for Indiana football, but I do think it's going to even be tough to get to 8 wins. We take a look. This stretch for Indiana from late September through late October is going to be very tough. Kinnick Stadium in Iowa City, very tough place to win at. You go from Kinnick, then you have a bye week, and then play Oregon in Eugene, which, wow. That needs no introduction. Autzen Stadium is unbelievable. And then you host Michigan State, although that's not really going to be that tough, at least if last year was any indication, given that Indiana put up 47 unanswered in that game. And then Maryland on November 1st in College Park, which will be a homecoming game for Roman Hemby, with the transfer running back who said that he wanted to transfer to Indiana. It was on his radar after Maryland came here last September. That game, though, was rain-soaked. It was gloomy. It was cloudy, but it didn't matter. The fans were still electric at Memorial Stadium. That really felt like an inflection point last season where Indiana kind of ended up on the map nationally after beating Maryland in that game, a game where Curtis Rourke did not play perfectly at all. In fact, quite the opposite. I believe, 2 interceptions on his first 2 pass attempts? It wasn't great, but Indiana still won that game handily. If we see atmospheres like that, and like the Nebraska game and the Washington game at Memorial Stadium, I'm really excited about where this team can go. I don't know about going undefeated at home. but definitely going to be a tough environment for opposing teams. I do think that, Illinois seems to always play Indiana close, at least here in Bloomington. So that is going to be a fun game on September 20th. That's Indiana's first Big Ten game. Then again, Purdue took Illinois to overtime last year, and Purdue won one game. So maybe these predictions are all for naught, and there's so much that changes now on a year-to-year basis. I do want to see, though, what is UCLA going to look like when they come to town on October 25th? Because Nico Iamaleava transferring from Tennessee to UCLA. What an interesting saga this has become for all the wrong reasons. Nico's camp, the Tennessee quarterback, who, as we established last week, was bang average as far as quarterbacks go, at least in the SEC. Wasn't great, wasn't bad. Was bad against good teams, but by and large was pretty average. Wanted $4 million from Tennessee. Of course, he doesn't get it. Josh Heupel, the Tennessee head coach, says, nah, I think we're good. You can move on because you're being selfish and you're skipping spring practices and you're being detrimental to the team. You're causing problems for the team. So we're going to move on from you. And Nico says, okay, who wants me? And everybody says no. Teams are waiting for his price to come down, which that's like waiting for a sale on Amazon before you buy something. It's like it's not worth full price. So you wait for them to slash the price, and then you swoop in and pick it up while it's cheap. That's basically what people were doing with Nico. But a lot of teams just said, no, if you're not going to budge on this $4 million asking price, we're not going to even entertain the idea of you joining our program. So UCLA picks him up for $1.5 million. So Nico gets $1.5 million from UCLA, but it's not just that he gets $1.5 million from UCLA. It's that California has the highest state income tax of any state in the country. So really, Nico goes from $4 million, which is what he was originally asking for, down to about $800,000 by the time he actually sees the money, which is hilarious to me. Somewhere between 1.5, 1.75 million, and he's going to lose about half of it to taxes. So I don't know who was in his ear telling him that he was worth $4 million, but whoever it is, whether it was his dad or it was somebody, maybe an agent, a manager, I don't know who it was, but whoever told Nico Iamaleava that he's worth $4 million is responsible, I would say, for ruining his image, and if not ruining his college career already, even though he's only going to be a sophomore this coming fall. That's bordering on management malpractice, I think. You basically take a guy's value and you decrease it by 75% because you were delusional about how much money he was worth. And now he's going to UCLA. And the reason I bring it up is that, Indiana hosts UCLA, yes, but Tino Sunseri is their offensive coordinator now at UCLA. He was the quarterbacks coach at Indiana last year. Did a phenomenal job with Curtis Rourke. So I do wonder, is Tennessee Nico Iamaleava the Nico that they're going to get in Westwood, or are they going to get a souped-up version, courtesy of Tino Sunseri, that, say, could come to Bloomington and dice up Tino's former team? That's something that I am keeping my eyes peeled for. So that UCLA game on October 25th gets a little more interesting. That's 4 months from this coming Friday. So mark your calendars. It's going to approach fast. I know it's going to come up fast. It's going to be a fun one. And I do really actually want to see now how Nico plays, because UCLA's quarterback play last year, especially when we went out to the Rose Bowl and got to cover that game, I was thinking to myself, yeah, these fans don't like Ethan Garbers, and now I can see why. They called him Ethan Garbage, UCLA's quarterback. He threw an interception early in that game that allowed Indiana to stretch the lead to 14-0, and from there, we know the rest is history. The Hoosiers did not look back, held UCLA to only 13 points in a home game, but with Nico at quarterback, under the direction of Tino Sunseri as his offensive coordinator, I do think that maybe we could see a better version of him than we saw at Tennessee this year. So that is something to keep an eye out for. And if you're counting 131 days until the season begins, and 131 days ago was December 10th, 2024, which was the Tuesday before Indiana basketball went to Nebraska and got walloped by the Huskers. So to put that into perspective, that's about how long we have from now until when the season begins. So I am interested. I mean, obviously, we saw a couple guys held out of the spring game. Elijah Surratt did not play, but nobody seemed very banged up long term as far as wearing braces or using crutches or anything like that. We know wide receiver Tyler Morris will be out for the year with an ACL tear. We know that. Curt Cignetti, after the game, says, we've got a long way to go, which is, it's typical coach speak, right? Cignetti says it was a good competition. They had a good spring. Nobody got hurt in the spring game. Elijah Surratt and Aiden Fisher, quote, dinged up their knees last practice, but it's not something that will hold them out long term. Kalen Black, who is, I believe, the only returning running back for Indiana. Cignetti spoke highly of him, said that he started camp well once again this year. Staying healthy is his thing. Also kind of the same as E.J. Williams, a wide receiver who's been with Indiana for a really long time. The best ability is availability, and for Kalen Black, it seems like that's what might be holding him back. But he should see some increased production this year, given that both Justice Ellison and Tyson Lawton are now gone. Cignetti saying that Fernando Mendoza, the quarterback, has made major strides over the last 3 practices leading up to the spring game. And he said Alberto Mendoza had a good spring as well. So maybe the younger brother will be the backup this year. So I'm really excited to see how that dynamic works out. I think Indiana's quarterback room is still pretty loaded. And Fernando Mendoza, I think, could basically be Curtis Rourke with 2 functioning knees. And Curtis Rourke was great enough on 1 knee. So imagining him with 2 legs and a good offensive line, which Mendoza did not have at Cal, is something worth getting excited about. You're listening to IU Sports Sunday. Back here on IU Sports Sunday, Nick Rottercap with you, reminding you that it's a great time to save at IU Credit Union. Go to iucu.org to see their most current money market savings and certificate rates. That's iucu.org. So before the break, we were talking about IU football and Nico Iamaleava and how UCLA will now have a quarterback who has already established himself as selfish on its roster when the Bruins visit Bloomington in late October. We were talking about how the best ability is availability. And nobody, I think, embodies that more than E.J. Williams, wide receiver for Indiana, who did not see the field a ton last year, initially entered the transfer portal after the season, and then withdrew and returned to Indiana. And Cignetti has lumped E.J. Williams in with Elijah Surratt and Omar Cooper as far as experienced receivers who have game experience at the Power 4 level. Cignetti said that Surratt, Cooper, and Williams all took turns playing the slot role when Mekhi Jackson tweaked his hamstring, and then Tyler Morris got injured as well. Cignetti says that Charlie Becker, Isaiah Bond, young guys made progress. So Cignetti says that, E.J. Williams made strides, made plays all spring long, but mental lapses here or there, different missed assignments, but says that he's counting on E.J. Williams having a huge year for Indiana, calls him a big target with great body control, excellent ball skills, and says he's a threat. That's encouraging because Cignetti last year around, I'm not going to say this time, it was more in the summer, was talking about how Williams, you're right, he's talented, but right now it's about him staying healthy. Translation, he wasn't healthy. You look at what he did last year as far as numbers go, he only played in 4 games, and he only caught 2 passes for 49 yards. He did not have much of an impact, if any at all, from the receiving standpoint. So, only playing in 4 games, That is the second lowest among anybody to step on the field for Indiana at the receiver or tight end positions. The other was Brady Simmons, who played 2 games, and I'm not counting Donovan McCulley because he transferred after playing in all 4 games that Indiana had played up to that point. So for Curt Cignetti to say that he expects EJ Williams to have a big year, I think that is a very encouraging sign. And hopefully for Williams, he can stay healthy. And that way we can see what he can do over the course of a full season. We take a look at his career. It's been a long career so far for EJ Williams. He started his career at Clemson, and this will be his 6th season of college football. He began his career in 2020 at Clemson, caught 24 passes for 306 yards and 2 touchdowns. All of those are career highs. So this is a guy who has not produced at an impactful level really more than twice in his career, because he had just under 300 yards in 2023, which was, of course, the last year of Tom Allen's tenure. But Williams in 2024, we mentioned 49 yards on just 2 receptions. 2022 caught 7 passes for 70 yards. In 2021, 9 passes for 66 yards. So really, he just hasn't been able to stay on the field. So we would hope to see more of what he did in 2020. Of course, a lot of stuff has changed since then. So interested to see how it plays out for sure. And again, you never want to put too much stock in a spring game because, like Curt Cignetti called it, a glorified practice. So Cignetti saying that either after the spring game, Indiana has more playmakers on offense or does not have very good tacklers on defense, saying it's one or the other. I would hope, for Indiana's sake, that it's the former, more playmakers on offense, guys who are harder to tackle. Because last year, you remember, the first-team offense was not very good in the spring game. And Cignetti said after the game, well, it's either that the first-team defense is really good or the first-team offense is really bad. Something to that effect. Now, Indiana nearly, if not led the country in points per game, was near the top of the nation in points per game last year. So again, don't put too much stock in it, but there are some things I think you can take away that are encouraging. Guys like Kalen Black, EJ Williams, expected, I think, to have big impacts this coming season just because of the roster turnover year over year. So we shift now to basketball, and it's funny. Indiana baseball played yesterday against Maryland, and I will try not to speak about the score of that game because it was extremely ugly and nobody needs to hear it. But if you must know, I guess it is my job to inform. Indiana played Maryland, second game of a 3-game series, and lost 17-4 in 7 innings. So hopefully you buckled your seatbelt for that because it was ugly. It was, I think, 15-1 in the third, and then there was a rain delay, and it was a whole thing. Yeah, it was ugly. The rubber match today at noon, hopefully for Indiana. On the diamond, they can clean the slate and go for the series this afternoon. But Darren DeVries was there. He was at the game. And that was cool to see. Very cool to see. He was sitting in the front row, and somebody posted on Twitter that DeVries took a phone call during the game, asked a question, how tall is he? And then said, that'll do, thanks. So you would think that just because of the way Indiana's roster currently stands, he was probably talking about a big fella. And I would hope that that's the case because that's really the only thing Indiana's missing as far as scholarship players. And I would hope that he's cooking something good because he's been cooking so far. He's been doing very well in the portal for Indiana. The Hoosiers have signed have had 6 players commit to Indiana. None of them have been officially announced, which is kind of the tricky thing. But We've seen 6 players commit. Of course, Tucker DeVries, one of them. The biggest one, I think, so far, Lamar Wilkerson, coming over from Sam Houston State. He committed on Tuesday. And Wilkerson actually was circled on, oddly enough, my spotting board when Indiana played Sam Houston back in December of last season, because you could just tell he's a star. So he scored 18 points in Assembly Hall when Sam Houston came to Bloomington, averaged over 20 points per game this season, shot over 44% from 3, both top 20 in the nation. Wilkerson has 1 year left. He chose to spend it in Bloomington instead of playing at Kentucky, Auburn, Ole Miss, Duke, Alabama. Ton of heavyweight schools in his recruiting, and Indiana won. So I think that speaks volumes about Darren DeVries and what he can do. Indiana also landed Sunbelt Player of the Year Tatum Connerway, who was 3rd in the nation in steals last year and averaged 14 points per game, 4.8 assists, and 4.6 rebounds per game. For a Troy team that made the NCAA tournament, he should also have 1 year of eligibility. Josiah Miles, North Florida transfer, 3rd team All-ASUN last year, 15 points per game. I mean, these guys are scorers. Reed Bailey, 1st team All-A10 at Davidson, averaged nearly 19 points and 6 rebounds per game for Davidson. He has 1 year left. So these are high-volume scorers, and these are guys who can shoot really well. And that's something that Indiana's been missing now for a little bit. So hopefully the tides shift a little bit as far as Indiana's ability to shoot from outside, because we've talked about it quite a bit, but it's something that Indiana has been lacking in recent years. And hopefully the script is flipped. Darren DeVries making phone calls at Indiana baseball games, hopefully recruiting a big fella. The spirit of the big fella, I think, lives on, even though Mike Woodson is no longer the head coach. But maybe that's the hump that Darren DeVries needs to get over, is recruiting a big man. But as the portal season dies down here in the next few days, I would expect Indiana to have a big fella or two coming down to Bloomington. You're listening to IU Sports Sunday. Back here on IU Sports Sunday, Nick Rodecap with you. The weather has finally turned. Unfortunately, the script on Indiana baseball has not, I regret to inform you. It's been a battle of mediocrity and just inconsistency. It's kind of strange. I've talked about it. This season felt like it was shaping up a lot like last year. And initially, this time of year, I would think that would be a good thing. But not the case so far this year. I say so far. There's a month left in the regular season. Time is running out fast for Indiana to turn this thing around and make a little bit of a run, like they've done so well over the last couple of years down the stretch. The Hoosiers had a very, very impressive win on Friday night, though, scoring 5 runs in the 8th to tie it against Maryland and then walking it off in the 9th. But they followed that up this season by yesterday, not this season, yesterday, by losing 17-4 in 7 innings. Now, there was a rain delay in there. The game should have been, it should not have started at 2 o'clock like it did. It should have probably been pushed back to about 5 o'clock because there was no rain after 5 o'clock. They decided to try to play the game at 2. They delayed it until 2:15. Then they got about 2 innings in. The rain was pouring. They kept playing. Indiana kept giving up home runs because it's really hard to grip a baseball when there is rain bucketing down from the sky. Then they delayed it. It was 15-1 in the rain delay. It was over at that point. So now, Indiana sitting at 11-9, entering today's rubber match against Maryland. Maryland, kind of a puzzling team because they're 4 games under 500 overall. They're tied for second to last in the Big Ten. But they've led the majority of the first 16 innings they've played against Indiana. Of course, yesterday's Mercy Rule game, 7 innings instead of 9. But Indiana right now is sitting at 7th, sole possession of 7th in the Big Ten. 11-9 in conference play, 21-18 overall. 2 games, or a game and a half, I guess, ahead of Illinois, and then 2.5 games ahead of Michigan and Michigan State. The top 12 teams make the conference tournament. So right now, Indiana does have a little bit of a buffer. As of right now, the cutoff is around Minnesota, Nebraska, Rutgers, 7-10, 7-11, 6-11, down in that region of the conference. But I think Indiana at this point now, it's not just about making the Big Ten tournament, because we've seen that it's very tough for them to make a deep run. Now, they did it last year, and that was what really lifted them into the NCAA tournament. So we've seen them show that it's possible with this current core, but it's going to be very tough if Indiana just limps into the Big Ten tournament to make a case for the NCAA tournament without a Big Ten title. So that's something to keep an eye on. The Big Ten tournament in just about 5 or 6 weeks from now in Omaha, Nebraska. Iowa is still sitting strong atop the conference, which is weird because I've said all season that I don't think Iowa's legit. But 20 conference games in, they're 16-4. So it's tough to say that they're not at least a little bit scary at this point. Indiana goes out to Iowa next weekend. Of course, that's Little 500 weekend. 2 years ago, they were home for Little 5, and nobody showed up to the games, as you might expect. It was also 40 degrees and rainy for that entire weekend. So the Hoosiers will play today at noon and then go to Victory Field and take on Ball State for the second time this year. Ball State fell to Indiana 7-5 in Bloomington a couple weeks back. They'll get a chance at revenge in Indianapolis on Wednesday at 6. Hopefully the weather is actually good this time around, because the last time Indiana went to Victory Field was last year. That game was rained out. This year, though, we should be okay. Sunny with a high of 77. No chance for rain on Wednesday. So if you want to go into downtown Indy, go to a beautiful ballpark and watch some weird baseball. College baseball is a little weird. That is a good way to spend your Wednesday evening with Indiana baseball. The Hoosiers, again, big win on Friday night. Will Moore, freshman third baseman, walk-off winner in that game to open the series. Indiana was dead in the water after 7. Maryland starter Kyle McCoy was fantastic. 7 innings, 8 strikeouts, 3 runs on 6 hits. McCoy threw 110 pitches 6 days after throwing 106 in his last outing. He threw 110 in 7 strong innings for Maryland, left with a 5-1 lead, and the team lost 7-6. Or left with a 6-1 lead, I should say. 6-1, and lost 7-6. Indiana had nothing for the first 7 innings of that game. I believe they only had about 4 hits. And then Maryland's bullpen, Andrew Johnson and Christopher Cespedes, blew the lead. Really, it was Johnson. Just got 1 out, gave up 3 runs on 20 pitches. So Indiana kind of ambushing the Maryland bullpen in the 8th inning of that game, found a way to win. So you'd think maybe you ride that momentum. You take the series on Saturday. No, that did not happen. Indiana used its best starting pitcher, Cole Gilly, yesterday, who just earlier this week was named to the top 20 starting pitchers in college baseball per ESPN's Kiley McDaniel. But Gilly did not have his best stuff yesterday, which happens to every starting pitcher. But Maryland jumped on him. And once the rain started falling, I think was really when Maryland's offense started clicking. Gilly pitched just 2 innings, gave up 5 earned runs, 7 hits, threw 50 pitches to get through 2 innings. He had to labor to get through it. Grant Holderfield came in the 3rd inning, and it's hard enough to have command when you're a sidearmer, but when it's pouring rain, you're not going to have any favors done to you either. Just a third of an inning for him, gave up 6 runs on 2 hits, walked 3. Maryland hit 2 grand slams yesterday. They hit 1 on Friday in the 2nd inning of that game. They had grand slams in the 2nd and 3rd innings yesterday. Grand slams in back-to-back innings, off the top of my head, that's the first time in a long time that has happened at Indiana. Or to Indiana, period, doesn't matter where. But Maryland had no shortage of offense yesterday. They have scored 24 runs in the first 2 games of this series, but it's still tied at 1. So we will see if Indiana can bounce back from yesterday and find a way to lock up this series. It would be their first series win since Michigan State. That was 2 weeks ago. And just their 3rd series win since March 16th when they swept Ohio State. And you point to It's never just one game in college baseball that concerns you. It's a trend that emerges over the course of a full season, and that's what's burned Indiana. Is multiple games now where they either get blown out and never have a chance, or do have a chance but find a way to blow it. I want to actually total this up because I don't know how many games in total this has happened now. You had 2 games in the opening weekend, one against Xavier, one against UNLV, where both were winnable. Northern Kentucky, which you should always beat Northern Kentucky. Indiana then lost to USC, blew a 9-run lead in that game, so that's 4. Fell to Maryland, so you just look at those 4 games. You look at those 4 games right there. Even 4 games is a lot because Xavier, still really high in the RPI, are the Musketeers. Indiana would be 25-14. Much better off than they are now at 21-18, with a couple more NCAA tournament quality wins on the resume. But losing out on all of those opportunities puts you in a very bad spot now. And when you have certain pitchers who, kind of like last year, are just unpitchable in big moments, you're really thin when you need quality pitching. And obviously in the postseason, every inning matters. You need guys who can get outs efficiently. And Indiana still may not have enough of those guys. And, even when Maryland was up big, they still kept pouring it on. They kept barreling up baseballs. So those low leverage innings do matter. And Indiana hasn't filled them greatly, I would say. Hasn't done a good job of filling those innings so far. But with the rubber match today against Maryland, a chance to lock up the series, we'll see if the script is flipped and Indiana can take a crucial series and head to Iowa, the top team in the Big Ten, with some momentum, because you'll probably need, if you're Indiana, to take 2 out of 3 against Iowa coming down the stretch as we approach the college baseball postseason, which is a very exciting time. You're listening to IU Sports Sunday. Back here on IU Sports Sunday, Nick Rotocap with you. We've seen that Indiana basketball is among the elite programs in college basketball right now as far as money is concerned. Indiana reportedly has over $10 million to spend on NIL this coming season, or I guess this offseason, this recruiting season. I would imagine a good chunk of that has already been spent, but Indiana having money, this isn't something that should be shocking to anybody. The Hoosiers, per Matt Norlander of CBS Sports, have $10 million or more, along with Arkansas, BYU, Duke, Kentucky, Louisville, Michigan, North Carolina, St. John's, and Texas Tech. Teams just behind, around $8 million per Matt Norlander, include Purdue, Auburn, UCLA, Villanova, Tennessee, Houston, and others as well. Kansas is in that group as well. Just because you have a lot of money does not mean you're going to be good. We saw that last year to a lesser extent, I would say, with respect to how much money Indiana spent relative to how much performance they got out of the investments they made on different players. There are a lot of numbers thrown around, and I do think it's kind of strange that NIL numbers are largely based on estimates, valuations, conjecture, speculation, rather than actual public numbers of how much these players are making. So all we have to go off of, by and large, are reports, rumors, estimates, things like that. Last year, Indiana spent somewhere around $8 million, maybe more, on NIL. Gave about $2 million of that just to Umar Ballo alone, who was first-team All-Pac-12 in back-to-back seasons and was either third-team All-Big Ten or honorable mention All-Big Ten. So it took a step back. Was honorable mention All-Big Ten. Yeah. So he almost made it. Almost, but I think almost is a good way to describe Indiana basketball. Almost made the NCAA tournament. Almost got over the hump, but never did. The rumor was they gave $500,000 for Trey Galloway to come back, which is hilarious to me. Yes, he made a big shot against Purdue, but $500,000 for Trey Galloway? Are you kidding me? I don't think anything more needs to be said about that. Just makes no sense at all. The problem that I think I and a lot of other people have with NIL is that these are players who are my age, 21, 22, 19, 18 years old, whatever, getting all this money, 6-7-figure sums before they ever do anything. And right now, you have players around the country. I mean, we talked about Nico Iamaleava, Tennessee football, transferring to USC. He wanted $4 million, and he was willing to, or somebody was in his ear telling him it was a good idea to sacrifice his reputation to leave the starting job at a program in the SEC that made the college football playoff last year in Tennessee to take far less money at UCLA, which is a lesser program than Tennessee. I just do not get it. You got guys chasing checks. They don't care about the schools. My favorite was Will Howard of Ohio State saying that the game, Ohio State versus Michigan, is a lifestyle to him. He spent his first 4 years at Kansas State. He spent 1 year at Ohio State and is lying through his teeth to the fan base about how the game is something that he's lived. It's something that dude, your biggest rivalry game was against Iowa State. It was not Ohio State, Michigan for 4 years. But you're going to come to Ohio State and lie about it to fans who do live for that game. Just not a good look. So the point is, no matter the sport, NIL is a problem. And just because you have money does not guarantee your success in college basketball. Now, NIL, I think you need money to have a chance at success now. I think we're going to see fewer Cinderella stories, fewer mid-major powerhouses, the likes of Drake, Indiana State. It's going to be harder for them to have sustained success now because they just don't have the same amount of money that the bigger programs do. But just because you have that money does not mean you are going to be successful. We saw that with Indiana last year. You have the cash to throw at people, but if you throw it at the wrong people, you're going to have what happened to Indiana, where you have a bunch of guys who are selfish and who are just playing for the money. They don't care where they get it from. They don't care about the tradition. They don't care about the history. They care about the check. And I think that's a big problem. So hopefully Darren DeVries can avoid that in putting this roster together. It's just a matter of waiting and seeing what happens, but I'm optimistic that DeVries can get it done here at Indiana. And hopefully, instead of just putting together a team of mercenaries and hired guns, we have a team that actually wins some basketball games, because I think that would be refreshing for everybody. You're listening to IU Sports Sunday. Welcome back to IU Sports Sunday. Nick Rodecap with you on this Easter Sunday. It's a great time to save at IU Credit Union. Go to IUCU.org to see their most current money market savings and certificate rates. It's been an interesting offseason for Indiana basketball. Everything is very slow until it's not. There was a blitz of signings for Indiana this past week. I think it was mostly on Wednesday night, which is annoying because one of my classes is a newscast that is taped on Thursday afternoons. So I was up updating the script at 11 o'clock on Wednesday saying, okay, we've got to put these players in here. And it's funny because people were kind of frustrated, I think, with Darren DeVries. Like, oh, he signed his own son and a couple guys out of the portal, but there still isn't even enough for a starting five. And then, woo, just wham, wham, wham. It started on Tuesday with Lamar Wilkerson, and then two more commit on Wednesday evening. It was very late, very strange. And none of these players have been officially announced yet by Indiana Athletics, but they should be in the coming days. There was one player, though, who did not come back. I guess come back is the wrong word. But did not recommit to Indiana, I guess, after the coaching change. And that was Haroon Zerno. It was weird because it's a very normal thing to I guess, reopen your recruitment, to decommit, to test the waters again after the coach that recruited you leaves. That's a very normal thing. But last week, it was last Monday, the Indiana Daily Student ran a story about how Indiana's coaching staff has not contacted Haroun Zerno. It's just a weird story because, and one of my friends is the one who wrote this, Daniel Flick, who's a fantastic writer. Covered the Atlanta Falcons for Sports Illustrated, covers IU athletics for the IDS. He's the co-sports editor there. Says that while Darren DeVries and his staff have been busy on the coaching trail, they have not yet knocked on Haroun Zerno's door. Zerno committed 2 months before Mike Woodson stepped down. He committed in late January and reopened his recruitment about a month ago, and his agent, Zerno's agent, said that he has yet to hear from Darren DeVries, which is perfectly normal to me because DeVries didn't recruit him. So why would he hear from him, right? If he doesn't want him, then that's fine because Mike Woodson was the one who wanted you to join Indiana, not Darren DeVries. So I think it's pretty normal. But it continues saying that Stevan Petrovic, who is Zerno's agent, has reached out to DeVries 4 times, which is not that many. As someone who's been ghosted by potential employers quite a bit, reaching out 4 times is not a lot. But a pair of texts and a pair of phone calls, but hasn't received any response. He told the Indiana Daily Student in a phone call on Monday. Zerno's camp said they first reached out to DeVries on March 18th, which would have been the day before he decommitted. But when the Hoosier staff didn't respond, he decommitted. So the agent continues saying that Zerno and his camp waited for Indiana to get back in touch with them. They never heard back. That was the reason why they decommitted. It's not anything that Haroun wanted to do. Quote, absolutely not. But we could not wait anymore on Indiana to get back to us, and they never did. And the agent continues saying, quote, he just wanted to make things clear for Hoosier Nation. It's not something we wanted to do. That's weird. I think this whole story is kind of weird because, like I said, I think it's very normal for recruits to not be contacted if, say, there's a new coaching staff. Like Curt Cignetti, not only did he not go on with a lot of Tom Allen recruits, there were a lot of guys in the program who he flat out told to leave when he was hired. He said he didn't like the way things were running. He said he saw the body language on the sidelines at practices, people side-talking, having their own conversations instead of focusing on the game or focusing on practice. So he told them to leave. This kind of thing, I think, happens all the time, right? Sometimes the coach doesn't want you. So for the agent to talk to the IDS and say, oh, well, yeah, I've tried to contact him 4 times in a month and haven't heard anything. I'd imagine Darren DeVries' phone is quite busy. I'm not going to say ringing off the hook because nobody uses a landline anymore. But whatever the cell phone equivalent is of ringing off the hook. Zerno and his agent says the staff did a great job of recruiting Haroun. He felt welcome in Indiana. He had a good connection while he was at the game with Hoosier Nation, and a lot of fans came up to him. He introduced himself to everyone, so it was kind of connection and atmosphere. He felt it would be a great place to play, and he fell in love with everything Indiana had to offer. And then this is where it gets really weird. It's like his agent is just giving the recruiting pitch to other schools in this story. Says Zerno's main weapon is his shooting ability and creating his own shots, but he can also play defense. He can play with the ball as a point guard. He's very unselfish. He loves passing the ball. And, of course, the agent is going to say this. He's absolutely the hardest working player I have ever seen. It's just so odd for the IDS to run this. Like, oh, of course, the player's agent is going to speak highly of him and is going to be disappointed that a place that reportedly has $10 million in NIL no longer wants him on the roster. It's just so strange. And IU Athletics didn't respond to requests for comment because, like I said, they probably see it from the lens of, oh, well, this is a very normal thing, and we don't have to justify our recruiting decisions to the IDS. Because as it is, I don't think most IU institutions are very fond of the IDS. And there's a whole other can of worms that we can open up if you want to. But Zerno decommits. Woodson Woodson, his retirement had been a known commodity for a little over a month at that point. By the time Zerno decommitted, he wanted to give the new coaching staff an opportunity. And Zerno's agent says, the doors are still open. Quote, we have not decided yet, but of course the doors are always open. Indiana had a real advantage in front of the other schools. Of course, he would consider Indiana again if they reach out, but at this point, no one reached out. Big advantage. I'm assuming he's talking about money, right? Because at the end of the day, like I said in the last segment, players really don't care about the school. Like Haroun Zerno, I mean, all due respect, he's from Bosnia and Herzegovina. He's from East Sarajevo. So, that's where he played anyway. That's where he played basketball in Europe. Zerno played in Bosnia and Herzegovina, which is over 5,000 miles away. And the agent, of course, is going to say that he felt at home, right? Like, oh, the guy who wants his guy to get as much money as possible is going to say that a school with notoriously deep pockets made him feel welcome. That's kind of where I see this coming from. It's like the agent using the student newspaper as a mouthpiece to get his side of the story out there. And again, it's not bad ethics on the IDS's part because they try to get comment from IU Athletics, but IU Athletics does not have to justify itself as far as recruiting goes because, again, this sort of thing is very normal. But it's just odd that the agent would use the student newspaper as kind of a, oh, well, look at us. We wanted money and we're not getting it, so now we're going to make you feel bad type thing. Very strange. But I think IU will be just fine without Haroun Zerno. And for his agent to say that, oh, Indiana had a real advantage because you said that your client felt welcome and you're trying to get your client as much money as possible. I think that's where this is coming from. I don't think there's anything more to it than that. And again, transfer portal season closes in, I believe, a handful of days. Yeah, it closes on Tuesday. The last day to enter the portal is on Tuesday. Darren DeVries was hired a month and 2 days ago on March 18th. So he's been very busy. And I would suspect that with whatever roster he builds, Indiana's going to have a very good chance to win. I think they're going to be able to shoot very well. Much better than they have in recent years under Mike Woodson, and that is going to be a positive. No matter who is there, whether it's Haroun Zerno or not, I don't really think that is the point. So if you're an Indiana basketball fan, be excited about this season. Be optimistic, but also understand that this roster, new coach, new roster, entirely new system, probably going to take some time to mesh together, and that's okay. But I think in the long term, Darren DeVries will set Indiana up for success. You're listening to IU Sports Sunday. Back here on IU Sports Sunday, Nick Rotocap with you. We were talking before the break about Haroun Zerno's agent going to the IU student newspaper and talking about how IU still hasn't contacted him. And the IDS chose to run a story on it. Last Monday, one of my friends who knows people in the basketball program said it was kind of weird. And I agreed with him. Very strange. Very strange. I obviously don't expect him to come back at this point, Zerno. But he was only ever committed for about 2 months. 2 months now. We're 3 months removed from his commitment. I thought it was kind of strange, the timing of it, because the writing was on the wall for Woodson's departure at that point, one way or another. Whether it was retirement or him being fired, it was kind of clear that he wasn't going to come back by late January. Zerno committed anyway, and then shocker, Woodson gets, I think, basically told to leave, right? Skips town, and Zerno decommits. So I don't really think it's a huge loss for Indiana, to be honest. They've got a coach who has gone and gotten a lot of the, I think, I'm not going to say top transfers. Obviously, Lamar Wilkerson is one of them. Who was a top transfer. But I'm almost okay, I think, with guys not being highly touted, highly recruited transfers, right? Because Indiana got a bunch of those last year in Miles Rice and Umar Ballo, and it didn't work. Kanan Carlisle as well was actually a highly touted transfer, if you can believe that. It did not work. So I said it before, but I'm okay with Indiana not getting a ton of mercenaries and hired guns and guys who are just there as big names. I'm okay with that because I think if Darren DeVries gets guys that fit his system, it's kind of like Curt Cignetti, right? You get a bunch of guys who maybe were overlooked, weren't big names coming out of high school or even in college, but you put them in the right system. You take a lot of experienced guys, put them together, and mold them to fit your philosophy. I think that is much better for Indiana. So it's not really the end of the world that Haroon Zerno decommitted, I guess, is the main point here. What is a big deal, though, is Devin Taylor of Indiana baseball. He will be a first-round pick in the upcoming MLB draft here in about 3 months. Yesterday, in Indiana's blowout loss to Maryland, there was one bright spot, and it's that Devin Taylor broke the career home run record for Indiana baseball. Taylor has hit 48 career home runs. He had a solo shot yesterday, and he now stands alone at the top of the Indiana career home run leaderboard. Will go down as one of the greatest players in IU baseball history when all is said and done, and he'll do it in just 3 years. That's the most incredible thing about Devin Taylor, junior left fielder from Cincinnati, Ohio. One, he didn't play for the first 2 weeks of his freshman season, so he would probably be, I'd say, at about 50 home runs by now. He will probably get there, but Indiana and Devin Taylor has been a cornerstone of this offense from the moment he became an everyday starter, which happened, I'd say, about a month into his freshman season, and he hasn't looked back since. We talked to Jeff Mercer about it yesterday, and that was really the only bright spot in that 17-4 loss. But Mercer said that there aren't many guys who not only hit the ball hard, but hit the ball hard all the time, never take at-bats off, always compete, are always willing to do whatever it takes to help the team win. And Devin Taylor embodies that to a T. So Taylor is going to go down as an all-time great in Indiana baseball. He'll be probably the first-round pick since Kyle Schwarber. And it's crazy because Taylor passed Schwarber in home runs earlier this season. And again, all these guys who are draft eligible do it in 3 years. But you hear so much about Kyle Schwarber because of what he's accomplished at the major league level. And at least of this generation, he is the best IU baseball player to come out in a long time, if not all time, as far as what he did at IU and what he did professionally. Mike Smith, the only NCAA player to ever win the Triple Crown, played at IU, did it in 1992 was when he won the Triple Crown, but he didn't do much professionally. Just playing pro baseball is really freaking difficult. So I think if Devin Taylor has a Kyle Schwarber-like career in that what he does in college translates to the pros as far as hitting nukes goes, he could go down long-term as a Kyle Schwarber-type legacy at IU. Now, that said, I don't know that Devin Taylor is the type to appear on College Game Day. He's very quiet. Actually is not a very good interview subject. Just very mild-mannered, very quiet. Jeff Mercer talks about how Taylor is one who leads by example rather than with his words. And his example is hitting bombs. But even this year, he's only hit 12 homers. Last year, he hit 20. It's because of the way pitchers approach him. He's just not getting a ton of elevated stuff, which isn't exactly it's not exactly something that's crazy confusing or anything. You don't throw the power hitter stuff that he can drive. At least you try not to. And when you do, you get burned. But Taylor's been hitting a lot of singles this year as well. His average, just off the top of my head, around 365 as a power hitter who is batting leadoff, which, again, Kyle Schwarber bats leadoff in the majors because pitchers like to walk him so much. Taylor gets pitched around a lot, but you know, he'll be content to go 3 for 5 with 3 singles up the middle, just as content as he would be content with going 1 for 4 with a walk and a homer. And I think that's what's made him so dangerous this year. He's been great for Indiana. One of the only bright spots this year. Him and Corbin Dickerson both. Dickerson in center field, Taylor in left. That's a pretty good tandem in the outfield, and they bat 1 and 2 in the Indiana lineup now. Dickerson hit a monster home run yesterday, 478 feet to straightaway center field. He hit it over the batter's eye at Bart Kaufman Field. Just absurd power. And Burt Granger, who is the Midwest writer for D1Baseball.com, has been in Bloomington this weekend covering Indiana and Maryland. And it's cool to see these Indiana players. Cooper Malamazian got some press as well. The freshman shortstop, true freshman shortstop, which if you know anything about playing college baseball, you know it's really freaking hard to be a freshman shortstop. But Malamazian's doing it, and he's doing a great job. But to see some of these Indiana guys getting this national attention, on one hand, it is really cool to see because this is the most attention they've gotten on a national scale, I'd say, since 2023. But even I think this might be more than that as far as scouting goes. A lot of scouts at games this year. There were 20 in the series opener against Michigan State when Joseph Jurwo was pitching for the Spartans. He will probably be the Big Ten Pitcher of the Year. He's a 6'6" lefty who is, on most days, lights out. So, a lot of scouts. It's cool to see that, but at the same time, it's disappointing because Indiana's got all this talent, and we knew that the offense was loaded. We've known that since way before this season began. And I said before the season that, by and large, I think that this team will go as far as the pitching and defense carry them. The offense will usually be there. Sometimes it's been shut down, and it's been kind of questionable because the pitchers that are shutting this offense down aren't very good. The enemy of everything in college baseball is sample size because it's not big enough. But by and large, the pitchers that shut them down are not very good, just by the numbers. And I know we talk about stuff. It's really hard to find a lot of stuff when it comes to college pitchers just because it's hard to get access to the data. The data is not publicly available. So you can talk about spin rate, you can talk about induced vertical break, you can talk about a bunch of stuff, but it's hard when you just see the numbers. And, for example, Maryland trots out a guy with a 9.5 ERA yesterday and holds Indiana to 4 runs in 7 innings while scoring 17. And they had to pitch in the same rainy conditions that Indiana did. Maryland got it done, Indiana did not. It's just kind of puzzling sometimes, but you see the talent of guys like Malamazian, Dickerson, Taylor. Taylor and Dickerson both will be drafted in the top 2 rounds this year. I'm pretty confident in saying that. Taylor should be a first-round pick, the first for Indiana in a long time. I believe it should be Kyle Schwarber who was the last one. And that's some pretty good company to be in. Whether or not Taylor's game translates to the majors, I think it's safe to say he will transition well to pro ball. Obviously, pitchers in professional baseball are much better than those in college, especially in the Big Ten. The Big Ten doesn't have a lot of quality pitching. I'm very interested to see how Taylor matches up against Cade Obermueller when Indiana goes out to Iowa next weekend, because Obermueller, if it wasn't for Joseph Jurwa, would be the Big Ten Pitcher of the Year. He's been phenomenal, strikes a ton of guys out, spearheading that Iowa team, which I think is still fraudulent, but they're 16-4 in the Big Ten, and nobody can say that they're better than that. So I'm interested to see how Taylor and Obermueller match up, because Obermueller will also be an MLB draft pick this year. So Taylor made waves in Cary, North Carolina, with the USA Baseball Collegiate National Team this past summer. That's with wood bats, hitting against guys who are professional caliber players. So I'm encouraged by that. I think Dickerson's game could also translate. Now, the thing with Dickerson is he doesn't have the longevity in terms of production that Taylor has shown at the college level, but it's very clear that Corbin Dickerson is a completely different player than the one who did not play at Louisville. All this is to say that if you have the chance to get out to Bart Kaufman Field to watch this Indiana team, if you keep in mind that the pitching staff will probably make you want to pull your hair out at times, the offense can still put on a good show. I say this talking about a 17-4 loss, but if you put it in the big picture of the potential of some of these guys, it's there. And I'm hoping, praying that Indiana has the chance to show its talent on a national stage. Whether that's winning the Big Ten tournament or making the NCAA tournament, I would like to see this team make a postseason run again like they did last year, because I think it's cool to have Indiana on those big stages in college baseball. Over the last couple of years, they've been there. Under Chris Lemonis, they were there almost every year. Under Tracy Smith, of course, they made the College World Series. And Indiana has shown that it can get to those big stages. This team, I think, is better than last year from an offensive standpoint, just in terms of raw talent. But for whatever reason, they just have not been able to put it together. Still just 3 games over 500, and we are at Easter Sunday, April 20th. Which, is it just me, or is Easter really late this year? I don't know. But Indiana baseball, maybe they're just, I don't know, maybe they're waiting really late to start their run. Maybe it'll start today against Maryland, win that series, go to Iowa, make some waves there, take 2 out of 3, go to Abilene Christian because it's a bye week, and then come back against Purdue and Michigan to close the season. Time's running out, though. It's got to happen fast. You're listening to IU Sports Sunday. Back here on IU Sports Sunday, Nick Rotocap with you on this Easter Sunday, and we saw Indiana softball in, I guess, national news a couple days ago. Head coach Shonda Stanton got ejected against Nebraska, in a game Indiana won, which was funny because you don't see many ejections at all in college diamond sports, baseball or softball, let alone an Indiana coach getting ejected. But Shonda Stanton gets ejected in the 6th inning of Indiana's game against Nebraska a couple days ago. After a play at the plate in a 2-1 game, runner dives in, appears to be tagged on the foot. The umpire calls her out. Stanton comes down the third baseline, argues it very demonstratively, and the umpire tosses her out of the game. Indiana was out of challenges, so they could not have the play reviewed. Stanton's in the umpire's ear, pointing, just, your typical. You see it all the time in Major League Baseball. You see it all the time in minor league baseball. You don't see it as much in minor league baseball, but you see it all the time in the majors. Coaches get mad. Umpires let them say their piece, and if they go too far, they get thrown out. Indiana went on to win the game. They scored 4 runs after Stanton got ejected, took a 5-2 lead, and won the game. So if Stanton's goal was to get Indiana fired up, it worked. Jeff Mercer did something similar for Indiana baseball against Penn State in that wild Saturday game last year. It was a year and a week ago today. Indiana was down something like 8-1, 9-2, came back and won 10-9. Mercer got a warning. He did not get ejected like Stanton did, but Mercer got a warning, and it was after it was either a blown strike 3. I think it was a blown strike 3 call. And Mercer gets a warning. The umpire says, "Hey, if you say any more, I'll throw you out." Mercer says, "Hey, okay, that's fine." Fires up the dugout, and Indiana goes on to win. So, I guess as far as warnings or ejections in the last 2 years go, Indiana is 2-0 in the diamond sports when the head coach either gets warned or ejected by an umpire following a controversial call. Which begs the question, if Indiana needs to start making a run in baseball, should Jeff Mercer get a warning today against Maryland? I'm just throwing it out there. I know it's a small sample size, but so far, Indiana's batting 1,000 in that respect. So maybe more coaches should get themselves warned by opposing umpires and fire up their teams. I think that would be a good way to, if nothing else, get some eyes on college baseball outside of the Southeast and the West Coast. That would be cool. Maybe I'm overreaching, but I think it would be fun. I think if Indiana needs a jolt today, especially after that deflating loss yesterday, and you say you just get back up and you play again tomorrow, right? It should be that easy, but it's not, because you're thinking, oh man, these guys hung 17 runs on us yesterday. And this isn't just one game in a vacuum. Indiana also got run ruled last Sunday against Illinois in that series finale, which was also a rubber match, of course, being the game that decides who wins the series. Indiana got run ruled 15-1 in that game and got run ruled 17-4 yesterday. So those two games combined, 32 to less than 32. 32-5. Indiana's been outscored in the last 2 mercy rules. And this is a team that a couple years back barely got run ruled, if anything at all. And the more I think about that 2023 season where Indiana won 40 games, including 26 of 30 at home, the stranger it gets to me. Because that was my freshman year here. And when you're a freshman, most of the time anyway, and this was the case for me, you don't have a car. So you usually can only go to the home games. And it was like every game outside of one where Indiana faced Brody Brecht, who is now in the Colorado Rockies organization as a starting pitcher, and 3 against a Maryland team that was led by Cubs third baseman Matt Shaw, who has been optioned to AAA Iowa, but has spent time in the majors. Outside of those 2 teams, Indiana was undefeated at home. This year, Indiana is 11-7 at home. Last year, Indiana also struggled at home, ending that season with, I do not remember off the top of my head, but it was a very similar home record. A lot of questionable losses. Indiana was 17-11 at home last year. This year, 11-7. So on pace for pretty much the same home record, which is just strange. It's just very strange because you thought maybe, okay, after the first month of the season where you spend it entirely on the road pretty much, save for 2 games, you play 14 or so games away from home. You think maybe, okay, Indiana gets home, you figure it out, and then you lose to Northern Kentucky, and it's like, what in the world? And you see now more and more people just harping on it. Unfortunately, because the coverage of Indiana baseball is so limited, a lot of the fans voice their frustrations in the replies of student reporters, which they have every right to do, obviously. It's a public forum. But it's really funny when, it's not funny, it's just annoying, when they're in the mentions of me and my friends who are just covering the team because it's our job to do that. We're reporting on what happens, we're offering our takes on it, we're providing context for things. We don't have any power. I can't fire Dustin Glant, the pitching coach, despite how bad Joe from Kokomo wants me to get Dustin Glant fired. I can't do that, man. I can't get Jeff Mercer fired. I have negative power. I have less than 0 power. I don't think Jeff Mercer deserves to be fired. I will say that straight up. I think it's tricky because you talk about the 2 metrics of success, I guess, for a college coach being 1, postseason success, and 2, sending players to the next level. And some will argue that, oh, well, how is it a measure of success for a college coach to get players to play for a professional team? You can make the development argument, and that leads to better recruiting, which in turn leads to better rosters, which should lead to better teams. Indiana has a loaded roster, but the team is not better. That's kind of the angle that people take when saying that Jeff Mercer should be fired. I will counter that by saying Indiana, for most of this stretch, has started 5 true freshmen in its lineup. And those freshmen have, by and large, I'm not going to say tapered off, but the freshmen got off to a really hot start, by and large, and have since tapered off a little bit. That is normal, because as opposing teams get more film, get more scouting data on these guys, they are going to pitch them differently. And like, take the example of Jake Hanley, the first baseman. Started the season batting in the bottom third of the lineup. Got elevated to the cleanup spot. His average was around 400 for a little bit. It has since dropped about 50 points. He had a stretch where he went 1 for 21. It's because teams now know how to pitch to him. They've seen something on tape, something in the data that says that he has weaknesses in his swing. I don't know where those are, but I do know that if a team actually knows how to attack you, and there's a ton of film and there's a ton of data, and it's very easy to do once there's a large enough sample. If a team knows how to do that, then they are going to exploit those weaknesses until you prove that you can hit those pitches. That, for example, is why Devin Taylor is so good on the other side, is because Devin Taylor's swing really doesn't have any weaknesses. He is perfectly okay with hitting a 2-hopper against the shift to the opposite field. He will also, if you give him a fastball down and in, turn on it and hit it 400 feet to straightaway right field. His swing does not have weaknesses. Usually for freshmen, it's hitting off-speed pitches that are in the zone for strikes, because you're obviously taught to think fastball first. And the first pitch that opposing pitchers will try to use to get you out is usually a fastball away. Something to force you to hit it to the opposite field. Then they go with a breaking ball low and then a fastball inside. And usually freshmen kind of stumble on steps 2 and 3 because it's really hard to hit a well-placed inside fastball coming at you at 90-plus miles an hour. I couldn't do it. That's why I'm here talking about the players who also can't do it. Give them time to develop. I think this season is actually going to end up more like 2022, where Indiana finished below 500 because they were playing a bunch of really young, inexperienced players. I think if this core can stay together, obviously you're going to see Taylor and Dickerson depart for the professional ranks, right? But if the core can stick together, freshmen like Cooper Malamazian, who had a big 2-run homer against Maryland on Friday, Will Moore, whose on-base percentage is over 500, Jake Hanley, who's a phenomenal first baseman. That core stays together. I think Indiana could be very good next year, but they have to get experience somehow. You're listening to IU Sports Sunday. Back here on IU Sports Sunday, Nick Rodecap with you on this Easter Sunday, and with the weather warming up, April ticking on, of course, that means one thing is right around the corner. It's this weekend. It's the Little 500, and I am stoked, absolutely stoked for this year's race. I'll be on the broadcast for the men's race. I'll be spotting the women's race for those broadcasters as well. It's going to be fun. The weather is going to be fantastic. I hope. I'm speaking it into existence. I don't care if the forecast says otherwise. Oh, man, there's rain. Well, it's early in the day, so that's fine because the men's race starts at 2 o'clock, so we'll be okay. There is a chance that we'll get about an inch of rain on Friday. There's a 70% chance, so the women's race might be a washout. That would be very unfortunate. So I am choosing to believe that it will not happen, and that it'll be great and it'll be fun and everybody will be safe because nothing stupid ever happens in Bloomington during Little 5 weekend. Obviously, we know that's not true, but I'm just hoping that people don't do anything dumb because it would be very not cool for stupid things to happen in Bloomington this coming weekend. And it's something that I never quite understand because it seems like of all places at IU, you don't need the excuse of Little 5 to go on a week-long bender. It seems like you can do it whenever you want because that's how some people operate at every college and, of course, here as well. But the fact that people do it so close to the end of the semester, like, dude, don't you have finals to study for? Because I know I do. But people can do with their lives whatever they want, and there's nothing that anybody can do to stop them. So, notwithstanding the drunken stupidity that will take place in Bloomington in about 5-6 days, we have a very exciting Little 500 on our hands. And I am intrigued to see, as far as the men's side goes, how Black Key Bulls fare. They're the pole sitters for this year's race. Cleared SAE by about a second by 1.2 seconds. Black Key Bulls won last year's race after failing to qualify in 2023. A phenomenal story there. They were the class of the field in qualifying. SAE, though, won Spring Series. I feel like it'll probably be a two-way fight between the two of them to see who takes it all home in 6 days' time during the 74th running of the men's Little 500. On the women's side, want to give a special shout-out to Libby Lewis of AKO, who became the first freshman ever to win ITT's, individual time trials, male or female. And she graduated from none other than Cathedral High School in Indianapolis, which is my alma mater as well. Funnily enough, she and my sister were friends growing up. Libby's older sister, Elle, played soccer at DePaul. I don't know if she still does, but we were classmates in high school. So very cool to see Libby doing well in Little 5. I'll be pulling for her because I'm not broadcasting the women's race, so I can root for somebody. I will shamelessly root for Libby Lewis because she is a Cathedral High School graduate. And you always want to see kids from Cathedral do well. There are also some kids from Cathedral riding in the men's race as well. One I know is Gus Kowalewski, who I believe rides for, I don't know if it's SAE or not, but I know he is in the field for the men's race. But yeah, Black Key Bulls, a very interesting story. They won last year's race by 3 seconds over Cutters, and again, did that after failing to qualify in 2023. And that's what's so great about Little 5 is you have all these redemption stories. You have these riders who work all year long, 12 months out of the year for this day in April. And it is, it's the two sides of sport, right? You have heartbreak and you have the euphoria of winning. Cutters, speaking of the euphoria of winning, Cutters Qualified a little down the order this year, qualified 12th, but they need no introduction. 3 seconds behind Black Key Bulls last year. They won in 2023, 15 wins, the most of any team all time. And I would never count Cutters out either. So Black Key Bulls, SAE, and 3PH, the front row. 3PH has never finished higher than 5th in a Little 500 race. So they'll start 3rd, and then row 2 is SIGEP, Forest, and Chi Alpha. SIGEP has won 3 races, but they'll be looking for their first win in 10 years. Sat on the pole last year, but could not get it done. Forest has never finished higher than 5th. Chi Alpha has never finished higher than 4th. Then Phi Delta Theta, Phi Gamma Delta, and Sigma Nu. Phi Delta won it in 2022, but both Fiji and SNU have not won since the 90s, although Fiji has finished in the top 10 7 times since 2010. And then you've got other teams that have won. Cinzano won in 1989. Cutters, of course, winning 15 times. And then Delta Tau Delta, last winning in 2021, raced as Jet Black from 17 to 22. Finished on the podium in each of the last 4 races have the Delts. Shout out to Hoosier Commish on Twitter. He'll be pulling for Delts on race day as they start down the order in 14th. Little 500 is going to be electric. I hope the weather holds out, but it's Bloomington and it's April, so weird things tend to happen. If you can't catch the race on the Little 500 Media Network on YouTube, you're missing out. It is an entirely student-run and produced broadcast, and it's done with the help of Galen Clavio as well. Phenomenal folks in the media school, very talented people doing what they're best at. And if you are able to tune in, then please do, because a lot of students have worked very hard to make this happen. And I'm hoping that the weather cooperates this weekend in Bloomington. Reds Orioles coming up. First pitch 1:35 here on WGCL. Coverage begins at 1:05. You've been listening to IU Sports Sunday. Have a fantastic Easter Sunday and try to get outside and enjoy this warm weather if you can.